You're telling me that the Getty family don't like it when they workers unionize? That's crazy.
My
Right,
God.
exactly. The Marciano Foundation, the minute there's all their guest services staff voted to union or announced they were unionizing, they just fired everybody and closed the entire art foundation. Like just closed the whole thing down because it was a vanity project for the Marciano brothers. And you know, I think it's really revealing that museums talk this big game about being so important to communities, but yet even insofar as they're even remotely important to communities, which I actually reject that most museums are important. Most people don't go to museums. This is like a thing that we don't talk enough about. Like 99% of people in the world will not go to your museum. Full stop. Full stop. So who's that 1%? Who's gone?
How many museums have you visited multiple times? For me, it's like the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania and not much else. And that's only because they have a annual Rails and Ales where you can go drink beer with
that
the
sounds
trains.
like a Wix, though.
Oh, it's fucking great.
That's
great. If it
Mm.
happens next year, that's maybe
Can
we should
we-
all go there.
Yeah. Can we also talk about worker safety in museums?
Oh, yeah. So I have also been an art handler and I'm friends with many art handlers. And so a major problem in the art handling field is that most art handler positions are contract positions. Specifically, most of them are in New York City, LA, the big art cities. And those contractors have very little protections under US employment law. And so with the rise of contemporary sculpture being so big and monolithic, you know, think of your Jeff Koons sculptures, think of your, your big like metallic public art pieces of crap, you know, like that stuff requires things like cranes, special training, you know, to even get close to it, you're wearing a hard hat. And that because they're contractors, when they do inevitably get injured, because here's the thing about art that's a little bit different from working in like, say, industry, or at least my understanding of it. And, Justin, please correct me if I'm wrong. But like in art, we're not really allowed to drop something, right? Like, I will do everything in my physical power to not drop a $40 million painting. And in fact, have been in the position where like, I was lifting a giant Audubon elephant folio, which is like just like a truly massive book. It's like the thing is like 4 feet long. And my friend and I were taking it down because I needed to inventory it. And we took it down and we were holding it and my arms were shaking. I'm like, Michael, I cannot hold this thing. And I'm like, well, you need to hold it or we're going to drop it about 10 feet down onto the floor because we're like high up on ladders when we're doing this. And it's like, I just like kind of like willed through it. And then like my arms were hurting for like weeks after. And that's like a really minor example, but I've had friends who've blown out backs. We've had contractors that we've used who are moving crates where full several 100-pound pedestals have fallen on them. And then like, dudes just walk off the job because they don't have health insurance. They don't want to put a claim in. They don't want to get fired from their job because they put a claim in. And so, a lot of art handlers have started to unionize or have tried to get some kind of employment protections in because it is a very brutal field because what we're asking you to do is often has to be done with your hands without machinery. And you have to follow whatever bullshit rules an artist comes up with to handle an object.
Yeah, Jeff Koons' new thing is like a big fucking spear with a worker on the end of it.
I imagine just a really big painting is also like a huge hassle.
Oh yeah, I've moved Jackson Pollock paintings that were probably 12 feet wide and 8 feet tall, and like that's something you do with like 10 people because you have to do it by hand and you have to lift it onto a wall. You got to hang it, and if you drop it. Like that painting was insured for $36 million. There's no equivalent in our society for something that's so discreet yet so valuable. And it's nerve-wracking. Handling art is very nerve-wracking.
Well, I would imagine.
Is there hope for unionization though? Is there a positive note to end this slide on?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that a lot of museums, There's a good amount of museums that unionized in like the 90s. And then there was kind of like a big death knell of that. And that recently there's been a huge spate of it. And also, even if museums are not actively unionizing, I can guarantee you that pretty much every museum has had conversations about it. I can guarantee you that people have organized within their museums without doing a union. For example, opposing new projects that would take advantage of people or require things like, the equivalent of crunch. A whole other thing is working on exhibitions. So like 2 to 3 weeks before an exhibition, you're usually looking at working like 80-hour weeks, depending on how big the exhibition is. People have organized against that. So they might not be forming unions, but they are putting pushback on directors. They're doing things like going to the press about abusive bosses, and they're getting those people fired, and racist bosses and stuff like that. So I actually I feel very encouraged every day at my comrades and colleagues for trying to make the museums a better place to work. We just need the people in power to get the fuck out of the way so that we can actually make museums what they should be and what I think the public, at least in the US, deserves, right? I can only speak to the US because I work for a public institution, but like you're the taxpayers of things like the Smithsonian. Like, we exist for you. And, if we're only just serving rich people or we're only just serving corporations, then we're not living out that original mission statement of to increase the diffusion of knowledge. It's to increase the diffusion knowledge for who, right? And it should be for you. And so that's what I just want to let people know, that in museums, the actual workers, we want to make it a better experience for you. And it's all the people in power, the corporations, that get in the fucking way of that. And it's very frustrating, but also there's a clear villain. And the great thing about clear villains is they're easy to organize against.
Speaking of clear villains, I have one more problem with the museum, right? Next slide, please. And that is, once you have the word museum out there, just anybody can call their shit a museum, right? And it gets a bit of the sort of like imprimatur, it gets a bit of like academic clout from calling itself a museum. It's not a particularly protected term anywhere, as far as I know. Like, you can put a museum up saying whatever the fuck you want, such as young Earth creationism, but you can also like use a legitimate museum to sort of like launder the reputation of a dubious actor, whether that's a nation, whether that's a company. And for instance, there's a giant franchise Louvre in Abu Dhabi, which is like hilarious to me. It's great. There's a massive modernist building there, which is like designed to make you go, "Oh, look at the pretty art," not ask any questions about the slave labor. Which
you can do like a big statement museum, like in Bilbao. Your big deconstructivist building, you just build it, and then it's like, well, everyone's going to come from all over to see this thing. Or you can do something like, and now everyone's copycatting that. Like, there's even like a big deconstructivist art museum in Roanoke, fucking Virginia now.
Oh, sure is.
Yeah, it's finally going to put Roanoke on the map.
It
was already on the map.
And then one of the weird ones is, I think you can have like a museum that's trying to push some like naked ideology, but which does have some actually interesting artifacts. I'm thinking like the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. I understand is actually
they don't have them anymore.
Yeah, because the FBI.
Well, they made them give it back, right? But also like the Spy Museum, like
which is genuinely interesting.
The Newseum was a big one.
Oh God, yeah.
And then
the CIA has the axe that killed the ice pick that killed Trotsky.
Yeah, police museums are fascinating, and they usually run by police departments.
Oh, we're gonna get canceled again because you want to be a cop.
I want to get into Scotland Yard's museum.
Jeremy was a security guard at a museum, so that's also kind of a cop.
Basically, a kind of cop.
Oh yeah, I'm just me walking up to you, getting paid $12 an hour to go. Like, please don't touch that.